Welcome back to another episode of Light After Trauma. I'm your host, Alyssa Scolari, and we have with us today Christina Vitagliano. Now, Christina is an author, entrepreneur, and the founder of the successful family entertainment concept Monster Mini Golf. Having spent 3 decades working on her memoir, Christina hopes to share her story and touch the hearts of readers with her account of childhood abuse, empowering survivors to reclaim their lives and learn to thrive despite their trauma. Her passion is to provide affordable, fun entertainment that the whole family can enjoy. Monster Mini Golf is a multi-million-dollar company with 30 locations across the USA and Canada. So without any further ado, I would love to introduce our guest today. We're going to be talking about childhood trauma with Christina. So welcome, Christina. How are you today?
I am good. How are you?
I am good. Really happy. Just to update the listeners, I just learned that while Christina is currently in Vegas, she's originally from the New England area, which I love, as everybody, all the listeners know, I'm a Jersey girl through and through, even though I live in PA now. So Christina's accent feels like a warm cup of tea for me. So thank you for being here. I'm really happy to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. Like, you're spreading awareness about, I think, one of the most taboo topics in the fields. People really shy away from talking about child abuse.
They do.
And you are doing anything but shying away from that.
Took me a while, but yes.
And I think that's important to point out, right? That it doesn't happen overnight for sure.
No.
So I guess let's start with take me back to how you even became somebody who spreads awareness on childhood abuse. Like, what is your story? Where did you come from? How did you get to where you are today?
Well, a quick overview is started when I was about 4 years old, and it lasted till I left home, which was around 16, 17 years old. Or actually, I didn't move out till I was 18, but it was that whole period.
That was the whole period that you started being abused around the age of 4.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. And then I left home around 18, or when I legally could, I was like out the door. And then I didn't tell anybody. I didn't talk about it. I didn't do anything. I'm sorry, it's my doorbell. Until I decided to sit down and write about it, which was about 20 something years ago. I sat down and just put it all on paper. And then I sat on that for the last 20 years, and then finally published my memoir this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you escaped your abusive environment. Now, when you were in your abusive environment, did you know at the time that was abuse? Like, when did you make that connection?
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is what's happening here.
Well, God, at 4 years old, I remember, I have a very, very good memory on some things, but I couldn't tell you what I had for lunch yesterday. But I do, I have such vivid, and that's a curse and a blessing at times, but very vivid memories. But I remember being that young, knowing that what was happening wasn't right. I didn't know why it wasn't right. I didn't know, because you're 4. I mean, you only know so much, but whatever it was wrong. And on the flip side, I didn't want to mess up our family. My mom, this was my stepdad, and they had just gotten married. So my big thing was, don't make mom unhappy, because she was so unhappy before. And now this man makes her happy, and I don't want to mess things up, And that's how it started. And I think once you start down that path, and I don't know why, you just continue down that path of, I am going to handle this myself. I'm not going to mess things up for anybody. And I was terrified that I would get taken away from the family and thrown into an orphanage, which to me was worse than what I was dealing with. Kind of short version of that whole story.
You're speaking such universal feelings and thoughts that children have, which is children have this concept that like the devil, and even adults, right? The devil, is better than the one that you don't. So I think so many children endure what they need to endure for the sake of keeping the family together.
Yep.
And not risking being pulled away from their family.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think as a child, it's instinctive that you want to make your mom or your dad, whoever it is that you've bonded to, or even it's both of them, instinctively, your job is to make sure that you do what you're supposed to do and make them happy, because that makes you happy. I don't know. I mean, it's a vicious circle, but that's not true. You shouldn't do some things just to make other people happy. Took me 30 years to figure that out, but yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, it takes some of us so much longer because that's what we think. And you're right. I want to make this person happy, right? I see how happy my mom is. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. I don't want to stir the pot. It's so difficult. And how did you was it just that with age you began to change? And then when you became a teenager, you were like, I got to get out of here?
No, couple of things. You said, it was wrong. I did know it was wrong at a very young age. And as you get older, boy, do you learn it's more wrong. I mean, so now this ridiculous thing of, wow, I'm going to protect everybody else. The wrong part gets so hard, and as you get older, much harder because you learn more, but you keep dealing with it, And then when I met my now husband, he was the first one that I ever told. And he's the first one that ever approached me and said, hey, what's wrong with you? I mean, short version, and right. Hey, what the hell's wrong with you? So, and he just did it in such a blunt way. We were young. We had been dating for probably maybe, I don't know, weeks. And I had been previously married and divorced. Didn't tell him, didn't tell anybody I'd ever dated. And I was about 30 years old. So I don't know if it was him in my face being so blunt and the only one who said, what the hell happened to you? Or if it was a combination of that. And at 30 years old, you kind of, I don't know what it is. You hit these milestones in life. Like 30 is one of them though, you say, what am I doing with my life? And you think you're an adult and you're not an adult at 30 because that's bullshit. I don't even know if I'm an adult at my age and I'm in my 50s, but it's just, you start to question yourself as to what you think and hey, maybe it's time I stand up and stop doing what I've been doing to myself. You're abusing yourself really for so many years. I mean, I listened to your one of your podcasts where you went through your relationship and I was like, dear God, how many of us have been down that same exact path with the same exact reasoning within ourselves? And then one day you wake up and say, holy cow, I'm a dummy, and in a good way though. It's a good thing to say because you realize you don't need to be that dummy all the time,
Right. It's not like I'm a dummy in a disparaging, a self-disparaging way. It's almost like you wake up one day and you're like, the pieces fall together.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh God, like
where was I, man? I know.
Right. Like I feel so disconnected from the person that I was when I was in it and in those bad relationships. And you also realize that like the bad relationships that you then continue to have in your teens and 20s are because you didn't really know any better.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you've conditioned yourself to be who you are. And it's instinctive. Well, I'm going to make this person happy. I don't want to upset the apple cart. And I do that to this day. I still do that. Yeah.
Oh, yes. The chronic people pleasing and not wanting to upset anybody. And, there are people, I say this all the time, especially with one of my clients in particular, where we talk about like the red flags and how all the red flags look green. Even the red flags that are so bad, they're on fire. We choose to look past.
Yep. It's almost you'll do anything to avoid turmoil. And I don't even know why that is, but it is a common thing. Like, oh, geez, I don't want to make anything bad, I don't know. Yeah,
and I think it's because we're taught when we're so young that other people's feelings matter more than our trauma and what happens to us.
Yeah.
And that's the narrative that we carry around, that it doesn't matter, yes, I'm unhappy. And yes, maybe this person is hurting me, but this person is giving me love, some sort of love, even if it's not what I really truly need or want, it's something. And something is better than nothing. And at the end of the day, my partner's feelings matter more than mine. So I stay.
I remember I went through a similar relationship that you spoke of in one of your podcasts. And I thought to myself, you can relate to every single word that you were saying. And then you wake up one day and say, hey, I know this sucks. I know I'm in a bad relationship. I know that he's really effing with me. You know what I mean? But I'm afraid to live alone. I'm terrified to be on my own. What would I do by myself? And then one day you wake up and say, I don't care what I do by myself. I remember saying to myself, if I sit in a room and I'm stuck watching TV for 12 hours a day because I have nothing else to do and I don't have any friends anymore because he's, alienated everybody, then that's okay with me. And as soon as you decide that whatever it is okay and is better than what you were dealing with, the door opens. And then you're just like, well, this is all good. And you realize everything you thought was complete bullshit because it's not that bad out there by yourself,
Yeah, eventually you'll get to a point. Well, I shouldn't say everybody, because some people spend their whole lives in
you're right.
one toxic relationship to the next, which breaks my heart and is part of the reason, why we sit here and talk about this, is to spread awareness, but I think some people do get to a point where the pain of being in the situation is greater than the pain that it would take to change. And that's when change comes. And I guess I'm wondering, like, for you, what do you think got you to a point where you were like, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write all of this out? Because you said this was like 20 years ago that you wrote all this down?
Yeah. I don't know, because he wasn't my husband then, but once he asked me, hey, what happened to you? When I answered that, you've held that in for that long, right? So now all of a sudden it's raw and it's in your face. And he's the kind of guy that just asks and asks and asks. He doesn't stop asking. So
he doesn't let it go.
He doesn't let it go. So I'm the person, and on the flip side, I'm still the people pleaser. So I answered all of those questions that I probably didn't want to answer at the time, but I did, which is a good thing, I think, in the long run, because but once it was all out there, I was like, wow. As I'm talking about it, I'm kind of teaching myself, wow, there's a lot of things I should have done differently. And I don't want anyone else to have to deal with any of this. If you could help anybody at that point, you're like, holy cow, nobody should have to deal with some of this. So I started to put it down on paper, and I said, I'm going to start from the beginning. And I just kept going. And my husband, he teases me. He said, for 6 months, all I saw was like the back of your head on a computer, because all I was doing was writing. And then when I got done, I was like, all right, now I want to publish this. Of course, knew nothing about publishing. And 20 something years ago, self-publishing didn't really exist like it does now, So I learned, holy cow, I have to have this professionally edited. And then I learned that costs about $5,000+ at the time.
Yeah.
I didn't have any money. So, then that was the next hurdle. How do you get from this raw bunch of words to it being fine-tuned and ready to go to a publisher? And then will anybody even want to publish it? So, that I sat on that. I didn't have the $5,000. I had left my career when I married my husband because I didn't want to be a workaholic. There's a lot of things, I think, that when you come out of an abusive relationship, whether it's child abuse or whatever that's happened over a long period of time, you're not just affected with who you are mentally, but like, I don't know, my vice was working. So I didn't drink. I didn't do any drugs, nothing like that, but I worked because work consumed my brain. So when this all came out, I learned that I also have to fix that. I can't be working 70 hours a week and married to my job, because if you're going to have a relationship, that person deserves some of you too.
Yeah. And
I wasn't capable of doing both of them. I knew that. So I literally quit my career, said, I'm going to give this relationship thing a shot because I failed so many other times. And I left that and went to work with my husband and started doing some, things and odds and ends. Of course, we had no money. We were living on like peanut butter. But so after I wrote the book, I'm like, I need $5,000. I don't have $5,000. So I created a company called Monster Mini Golf. And
that's how you became the accidental entrepreneur.
Yes. So in my head, I was like, I'm going to raise $5,000. I can do mini golf indoors, me and a friend. And when I raise the $5,000, maybe I can get it published. And then I'll be able to make, enough money to live on too. In the meantime, that was almost 20 years ago. And now we have 30 Monster Mini Golf locations. We've franchised it. We've got 2 crazy locations in casinos in Vegas here, one with Kiss, one with the Twilight Zone. And I got sucked in and I became a workaholic, and my husband owns this company with me. So I kind of turned him into one now. And now he wants to be the workaholic and I don't want to be. So that's its own battle. But yeah. And then when the pandemic hit, I sat down and said, oh, okay, we're closed. There's nothing to do. And hey, self-publishing is amazing. Look at all of this. And I self-published. Yeah.
Yes. So now you have this book out titled Every 9 Minutes.
Yep.
So can you tell us a little bit about this book? Is this detailing your life?
It is.
And what you went through?
It is. It's titled Every 9 Minutes because every 9 minutes there is a reported case of child abuse in the United States. It's in the United States. The rest of the world, I can't even imagine. And that's reported.
Right. That's what's reported.
Child abuse, I think, is the majority is not reported. I never reported mine, because it's so taboo and you just conditioned. Nobody tells anybody about it. And all kinds of very bad things are wrong with the whole subject. But anyway, that's where the title came from. And the book is a memoir. I've changed a lot of names. I've changed a lot of places just because respect for people that other people, good people. But I kept my name in it. And it starts in 1969, which is when I'm 4 years old. And it ends when I met my husband and how the whole thing kind of came to light. And I talked about it. So it spans 30 years. But I think a lot of people, and I apologize if my dog's upstairs.
Is that what that is? Is that your dog?
Those are right. We have 2 bulldog pups and they're insane. I think a lot of folks will, and it's getting better. People will talk about child abuse and they'll talk about their experience of abuse. I think when I wrote this book, it spans that long because it's not just about the abuse. It's about the effect that the abuse has on you for that period of time.
That is so important that you said that because yes, abuse, when we talk about abuse, we cannot just talk about the incidents themselves because they have ripple effects onto your life for decades and ages to come. Yeah. So I love that you said that. I mean, it's so important not to just talk about, oh, this is what happened to me, but then
this is what happened to me as a result of what happened to me.
Yes.
This is why all these things happen.
You said it best.
Yeah.
You said it best.
And a lot of people don't talk about that because, and there's nothing, I think it's because when somebody hears that subject, it just is like, wow, it's so big on its own that people have to get what happened out. But to me, and this is a really weird thing, what was happening was the abuse became so routine to me that, I'm like, I could handle that crap. It's everything else that's happening to me that I couldn't figure out until I was old enough to say, oh, it's all because of that crap,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're exactly right. I think it's so important. And I guess that one of the questions that I have for you is, what is your goal with this book? Are you trying to show people that they're not alone? Are you trying to show people that they can survive this? What was the goal for publishing this?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. A few things. One, we're not alone. Two, I'm okay to talk about it if you guys can't, because there's a lot of people who can't talk about it. It's not, Doesn't matter whether we should or shouldn't, they just never will be able to. So sometimes knowing that somebody else is talking about it makes life a little bit better. And yes, you can. And I don't, what's weird? I don't like the word survive it, because I hate surviving shit. Like surviving, I want to, it hurts. I don't want to hurt anymore. That's going to hurt forever and ever. That never goes away. I think you have to try to overcome the intensity of it. And you will never overcome it, but you have to outbalance it. You know what I mean? Yes, it's there, but I'm going to stay a step above it and keep it in check. But surviving it is bullshit, because you never survive it. That's crap, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you said there, that it's not so much about surviving it as it is about managing the intensity of it. It's about not letting the memories and the flashbacks and the feelings and the urges swallow you whole and take over your entire life.
Yep. And it's weird. And I think, some of it I wrote about, and some of it I don't, because you can't write everything and you don't want to share literally everything. And it's a hard subject to actually write about, because people have a hard time reading about it too. So you had to balance, hey, I have to share it, and I don't want to share everything. And I remember my editor, when she went through it, and you go through a child abuse scene in the book, she would come back to me and she would say, okay, well, this is good. change this, you air his hair and whatever. And then once in a while she'll go, hey, detail this scene more. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to detail that scene more. You out of your mind. It's amazing that those words are there.
Right. Like, you're lucky I even got this much. There's no way I can detail this.
But man, that was, I think, you're like, how is it writing it? Writing it was one thing. Dealing with the editing and having somebody above you or with you on your team say, this is good, but if you really want to share and you want somebody to understand that you can outbalance this or do whatever, you have to show them what happened. And some of that stuff came back to me 4 and 5 times. And finally, it was over Christmas, this past Christmas, right before I published, I sat on that book for about 6 weeks because of her notes. And I was like, I can't do it. I can't do what she's asking me to do. Another part of me was saying, if you want this to be published and you want to share it and you want people to see what happened, to actually make the point come across, then you have to do what she asked. And it took 6 weeks. And one day I got up, just like I think we always, hey, get up and all the puzzle pieces fell into place, or kind of. And I said, I'm going to give it a shot. And I did. And when I got done, it was like I had to take a shower. I'm like, I just got to walk away from that. Just don't ask me to read it again. You got the words, but somebody else read it now, because I've just lived it too many times.
Yeah, that's, I think, another really important point is, I'm sure as you were writing it, or even going through the editing process, you find yourself right back in it.
Oh, it's brutal. The editing process was the worst. because when you edit, in my book is about 370 pages. It started at 600 because I had it, because for me to write from the time I was 4 until whenever I thought the end was, I literally had to go through my entire life. And then somebody picks it up and says, we don't need to know what you had for lunch one day, but I couldn't get from A to B. So we had to get rid of all that crap. And because it took me 20 years to publish, by the time I actually got it published, I had read that thing so many times. It's just reliving it and reliving it and reliving it. So yes, it was good. But in some ways now, I'm going to be honest, I'm very, very angry at things that they just make you angry. It's like, why do these people let this happen? Why are these people today still siding with that guy? My family members that were like, oh, he's a saint. I'm like, you're choosing not to see reality. And that's a very hard thing to deal with. And I have to be the person that says, well, that's your problem now. My issue is let's help people who want to be helped, and band together.
That's the hardest part. Is it's the reactions of the other people, right? So you're bearing your soul, and then there are people that go, like, what are you talking about? Like, he was a great guy. Like, what are you doing this for? Yep. And that pure, unfiltered rage that you must feel. Like, what in this moment, you're in these moments where you are being almost like not forced, but you had the pressure on to like share more and be a little bit more vulnerable. And then you're met with opposition from people, family members or friends or people who know you that are like, what are you talking about? This is a good guy. Like, in those moments, what kept you going? How did you like stay true to the fact that this was right for you?
Anger.
Turning that rage into something productive.
Yeah. You say persevere, survive, overcome. Yeah, sure. All of that. Anger. I'm like, no, you're wrong. And more that I'm not the only one. I mean, nobody talks about this. And in this day and age where we have, and I will give we'll say the millennials because they want to cancel everything, but on the flip side, people are speaking out more than anything in the world, but they won't speak about this. So how do you want to do everything in the world and fix it all? Oh, but not that subject. That's too cool. That's too taboo. I don't want to do that. So I kind of want to get to the point where scream about this too.
Yes.
No.
Yeah. We're going to scream about this too.
Yeah. We're at that point where somebody, if enough of us are yelling, people will say, okay, well, it is about time. Celebrities have definitely been more vocal about it. And I think that's great that they are. But I think being a normal person and not that celebrity and everybody not protects them, but they have the voice. I think that when you see a celebrity come out and says, I was abused or this is happening in Hollywood, you're like, well, that's good. And I'm glad somebody's talking about it, but you still feel like, but I'm just a normal person and nobody listened to me. So I want to be the normal person that speaks out kind of,
Yes. And, the thing is, right, survivors of childhood abuse, we've all got rage. And if we're not taking that rage and if we're not using it to speak up and speak out about this taboo topic and shout it from the rooftops, what child abuse is, how it affects people in the long term, what this does to us, then that rage is still going to be there. It's still going to go somewhere. And 9 times out of 10, we're going to take it out on ourselves in ways that are self-destructive.
You are 100% correct. Yep.
So like that rage has to go somewhere. Yeah. So there's so much power in using your voice, whether it's through writing, whether it's through speaking, taking that rage that you're talking about, which I'm glad you said it, because honestly, that is what keeps us going. Rage. Rage.
Yep. And you have to keep it in check because we can't go running around with knives and guns, even though your head says, well, I wish I could, but
I wish I could.
I wish I could.
I wish I could.
Yep. Wish I could. But this isn't the cartoons.
Right. So you have managed to take all of that anger, all of that grief, and turn it into something that this is your voice. And, I have to ask you, like, when you look back on the years in which you were enduring abuse, were there times where you just wanted to completely give up?
Oh, of course. Yes, just a yes. Yeah. And I think more as that's weird because even after I've talked about it and it was out in the open and I wrote it down before I published, more as I got older. And I think there's something about this subject, abuse of any kind. The older you get, it seems like because you get smarter and wisdom kicks in. And I think when you're younger, you don't realize how bad it is, or how wrong it is. And then you get more educated on people. And then you realize how jaded adults are and they're teaching their children wrong things. So you get angrier. So in some ways, it's harder to deal with the older I get, but because you're smarter and because you've learned a lot, you learn to balance it better. It's not easy by any means, though.
I love that you're saying this because this is what happens. And it's fantastic because I think that so many people, scratch their heads over why adults tend to be so distraught about abuse that happened to them when they were younger. And I think a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people, even people when talking about themselves, and even me personally, when I started, a lot of my memories were repressed. And when I started to have all of these memories, I was an adult. So there were moments that, I've had, and I know a lot of my clients have had, where it's like, why am I so upset about this now? Like, why am I more upset about this today than I was 25 years ago when this happened? And it's because the older you get, the more you know, the more you understand, and the more you feel, and the more you have language to be able to put to what you feel. So it's actually very, very natural. Like it's actually harder when you're older. So hard.
And I get, what makes me anger is, as you know all of that, and you say to yourself, God damn it, that's why these adults are abusing children, because they know that. So I got angrier and still get angry because I'm like, well, this person was a full-grown adult and what they were doing was bad, but they were 100% aware of what they were doing too. And I think that's what makes you angrier as you get older, is you really, really did something terrible to a child with full knowledge of what you were doing.
Yes. And there's no excuse. No excuse for it. Like you knew, you took full advantage.
You chose to do that. That's a choice. You know what I mean? I don't care. It's not a sickness. That's a bunch of bullshit. You've chosen to do that. And if it was carried on from your parents, then that's a shame. But this is why we're standing here today talking about it, so that maybe it doesn't keep going, because nobody seems to care that it is going.
Yeah. And when you talk about like, the whole, like, it's a sickness type thing, like, you know what, whether it's a sickness or not, I don't give a fuck, because you know what? I have a sickness. Right. I have complex trauma. And do I walk around hurting people? No.
Exactly. There's no. I don't care if it's sickness or not. It still shouldn't happen.
There's no excuse. It's not an excuse.
No.
Right?
Yep.
It wouldn't be an excuse for me to get drunk and get in my car because I had a night where I was traumatized. That's not an excuse. Right. So, why?
Yeah. Why is it okay?
Why do we make excuses? People? Why do we excuse child abusers so often? It's infuriating. I could scream about it from the rooftops.
It really is. It really is.
It really is. And this book that you've written, like, it feels like it's a message, not just for other people, but also for your younger self, like a message to hang on, because could you ever have imagined the life that you have for yourself now? Would you ever have pictured it?
No, not in a million years. not even close. Yeah. Yeah. So weird.
So I'm going to ask you another pretty candid question. Knowing what you know now about how your life is going to turn out, are you glad you stayed? Are you glad you hung on?
Through all of it, you mean? Yeah. I mean, not glad that it happened, obviously, but yes. Part of me, I think, survived. And this is my individual, I think, case, I think, is because my father was so jealous in some weird way that if I got a better grade in school than his crazy son did, that would piss him off. So I learned, oh, well then fuck you, I'm going to piss you off. So in a lot of ways, I was like, oh yeah, he's failing and you want me to fail too? I'm not going to fail. So there's a lot of things that, and I think a lot of us do that, is, oh, you don't like that, and there's a way I can piss you off, but not piss you off. You know what I mean? So I just became this driven, crazy person to not be like the rest of my family. So I don't want to say there's good that comes out of bad, because nobody wants to go through that bad. Nobody should ever go through that bad. But there are, because of the abuse, there are, I don't know, things about me that I'm glad that they're like that, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to explain. Not that I'm thankful for him for anything, but
No, right. We're not thankful. It's not like we wish that we're glad that it happened because it taught us a lesson. Like none of that. It's just a matter of like, I think for the people out there who are in the thick of it and just want to give up and want to end their lives and want to throw in the towel and say, fuck it. It's like, I think about you and your story and, you've managed to go from being severely abused to getting out, getting married, starting a multi-million-dollar business, writing a book, being a voice for those who don't have a voice. And like, I think to myself, like, if that's not a message for the listeners out there to keep going, I don't know what is. Because look at where you're at now. It's so inspirational and it gives so much hope, even though, right, you're very real about, listen, some days are bullshit. Some of this sucks. This sucks. It's still infuriating and I'm not over it because we don't get over it. We do not get over it, but we learn how to not let it consume us.
Yeah. That's the balance.
That's the balance.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it is.
Now, if people, because I just feel like this book, first of all, to the listeners out there, this book has like well over 100 reviews. I think I was looking on Amazon. Yeah. So this book has well over almost 120 reviews on Amazon. Extremely high rated book. So if people want to find more about you, want to find your book, what's the best place they should go? Should they go right to Amazon? Amazon's definitely
the easiest. So if you Amazon and just search every 9 minutes, it pops up. My social media, I'm always obviously promoting my book, but if you look up every 9 minutes on anything, Twitter or anybody, it'll obviously pop up. My website and all my social media handles are 123 Christina V. So whether you're on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, or my website is 123christinav.com. You can find me there. You can message me from anything, anywhere. I'm very responsive.
Fantastic. And you said that's 123 Christina V.
Yep. And .com is my website. Yep.
Okay. So for the listeners out there, I'm going to link that in the show notes. So head on over to the show notes so you can find that. You'll have access there to everything. Christina is also, she's a speaker. She does so much. Check out this book. The link will be in there. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was an honor to talk to you. And I think you're shedding light on the ripple effects of abuse, of childhood abuse. And you're screaming it from the rooftops.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening, everyone. For more information, please head over to lightaftertrauma.com, or you can also follow us on social media. On Instagram, we are at lightaftertrauma, and on Twitter, it is at lightafterpod. Lastly, please head over to patreon.com/lightaftertrauma to support our show. We are asking for $5 a month, which is the equivalent to a cup of coffee at Starbucks. So please head on over again. That's patreon.com/lightaftertrauma. Thank you, and we appreciate your support.